Welcome to another Wednesday night session with myself, my co-host Bucket, and my mentor and dear lifelong friend Horsey. Good evening. How are you?
Just frozen.
Hi, I'm good.
Alrighty. So tonight's topic is quite a thought-provoking one. It's very important. Let's get started. The topic is about Easter. First question I have is what it means to celebrate our Lord's resurrection.
Do you want to answer that?
Easter is my favourite Christian festival, actually, because it's the crux of the whole thing. Whereas, Christmas, baby being born in that, and it's much more commercialised, but Easter is a lot quieter. And I think Easter has a lot more meaning in the heart of Christianity. So as a Christian, I prefer it. And it makes you reflect a lot more, I think, on what's going on.
Your thoughts?
I always thought that Easter was basically the celebration of rebirth. So that was kind of what I was taught to believe. Everything about is the rebirth. So when we celebrate Easter eggs and things like that, all those things symbolize rebirth, and it's the rebirth of Christ. But it also could symbolize the rebirth in us. We could, change ourselves in a way.
Be reborn.
And be reborn. But that's
well, yeah, the egg. The breaking of an egg and a chick coming out of the egg is certainly a symbol of new life, isn't it?
That's right.
It doesn't matter if the egg's made out of chocolate or anything. It doesn't really matter to me. In fact, it's probably better. But the original Easter eggs were painted eggs. They were real eggs, and they were colours. They weren't actually chocolate. Chocolate is a product of commercialism, I suppose, and the idea of selling Easter. But the idea of that's what I like about Easter, whereas Christmas, giving present people, is a bit different to, the Christmas presents that can be given are anything you like. What do you want for Christmas? Oh, I want a new bike. I'll get you a new bike. And Christmas morning, there's a new bike. But Easter, the presents given at Easter are Easter eggs and those things which symbolise what the festival is about. So I think that's nicer. And I think that's more, more in character with what Easter is. And it's more difficult to forget the real meaning of the Easter festival for me.
I think you're right. Easter is about forgiveness. It's about hope. It's about resurrection. It's about new birth. It's about being reborn, as Philip said, not just being reborn as, being reborn in life, being reborn in God, being reborn in the fact that we are given a clean slate yet again, and that he died on the cross because of us and for us to take away every man and woman's sin, every child's sin, and he bore that upon himself, and and being reborn in the spirit, reborn in the hope of God, that we're given breath of life almost every day. We wake up and we breathe life, and that's his way of loving us even further, to saying, I am with you, I'm the way, I'm the truth, and I'm the life.
Well, it's a miraculous story. It's a terrific story in that the setting of Christ's death and resurrection was under the Roman authorities. And those guys were good at executions. They did them all the time. And they hung guys on crosses all the time. In fact, there were a couple with Christ on his left and on his right, weren't there? And so they knew when a guy was dead, and they put him in the tomb, and that was it. And a couple of days later, lo and behold, he's gone, and no one can find the body, and the guards get in trouble, and they're chasing around trying to work out what the heck happened. And eventually they had to cover up the fact that they just lost the body. A few days later, he starts appearing to people and doing things. And so it was a bit of a scandal for the Roman authorities. So it's a great story. But, there are talk about the fact that people have gone to, but it's the only example where someone's actually been gone for quite a while, a couple of days. you know, as I say, Christmas, I mean, it's all very nice and that, and, you know, the baby in the manger and all that, but it kind of can lose its meaning a bit. But as you mentioned, Kat, what Christ died for, the purpose of that death and the purpose of that resurrection and what that actually means in terms of the Christian gospel, if you like, is still one of the major elements of the Easter story. And it's still, I mean, if you go to church at Easter time, you know, the services are long and complicated and they talk endlessly about it. So it's still there, whereas Christmas is a bit, it's easier for people who aren't religious to celebrate, if you like, than Easter,
Well,
which I guess is why Easter is a quieter festival.
The thing is about Christmas is that Christmas has had so many changes via tradition to it over the years. We should probably do a video about it, about why we put presents under the tree. Why do we even have an evergreen tree when there's no evergreen trees in the Bible? You know, there's so many things that Christmas has that have basically developed over a millennia to where we are now. That we should basically do a brand new episode of it, but I won't go into too much detail because we're talking about Easter. But Easter is you've put it on the nail, which is we know basically what Easter's for, and we have symbolism, which is specifically reminds us of the purpose of Easter. So that's what
I want to throw in. I've never done this before, but I want to throw in a random question before I ask question 2. Is Horsey? I often ask my father this, and I've had topical conversations with Philip about this. Is the Passion of the Christ what it is? Because when Mel Gibson showed it to our late Pope John Paul II, Saint Pope John Paul II, he said, when he watched it, he said, it is as it should be. But the thing of the debate is, was it as graphic and as gruesome as what the Passion of the Christ makes it out to be, or is it not as gruesome and as violent and as, too much for one person to handle? Because I believe it's meant to be that way.
I think personally it is, and it was probably a lot worse than what the movie demonstrated. But me personally, I don't really want to watch that movie because that movie is graphic and hardcore. Okay, it is really hard.
Good representation of what actually might have happened.
I don't particularly want to show my nephews that movie purely because it's got some hardcore violence in it. And when I was watching that movie, it was really hard to watch. Out of all the Christian movies I've seen, that is the hardest movie to visually watch. Because it
was no different to a lot of the stuff that's on television and on the streaming services now, though, as far as graphic violence goes. I wouldn't showing it to youngsters nowadays because they've probably seen equivalent graphic violence on other films. I think The Passion of the Christ, I haven't seen it for some years, but I think it's fairly close to what might have happened because you've got guys being whipped and being beaten and that sort of thing. And that's much the same as what has happened over the centuries. The interesting thing is about that, you're right in what you alluded to, Bucky, and that a lot of guys might have died under that treatment before they even got to hang on the cross. But the interesting thing about that story with Jesus is there was a purpose in Jesus going to the cross. He was meant to do it. He was meant to die there, and he was meant to come back to life. And so even though Jesus was treated very, very badly, he wasn't actually going to die. There's another force at work there that made sure that he actually did what he was supposed to do on the cross. About that.
Second question is, do we spend way too much money? No, here's my second question is, do we spend way too much money on buying chocolate and other sweets that are not good for us during the blessed season? Like, are we spending too much time going out there and buying things that we frivolously that we don't need, that we should be more focusing on, what God went through for us and why he did it for us,
we are. But you know what? like it's how we make Easter fun for the kids. I like Easter bunnies, and even though I shouldn't be eating stack loads of sugar or chocolate bunnies, I remember when it was Easter and it was just myself and two other flatmates, both of which were over the age of 40, and I bought them each Easter bunnies. So yeah.
Well, I think we do. I mean, like everything else these days, people do overindulge. As you say, there's nothing wrong with having. I mean, I remember when we were kids, those little tiny Easter eggs, little tiny ones. My parents would have a trail of them leading behind the lounge and around, and we'd follow the trail. At the end of that trail, we'd find the initials of our name spelled out in little Easter eggs. The interesting thing about the Easter Bunny is a lot of people say the Easter Bunny clause in that it's just a creation and it's not actually necessary. Well, no, it's not necessary, but true this is. But apparently the Easter Bunny, the tradition of rabbits being involved in Easter celebrations came from the early church, because rabbits, you know how prolific rabbits are at breeding, they were seen as a symbol of fertility. And also, it was believed at one stage that rabbits could actually reproduce without mating.
No way.
Like a virgin birth, if you like.
Wow.
So that's why it was connected with Easter, because it was connected with Christ, because Christ was born of a virgin birth. And as I say, I don't know how true that is, but it may explain how the Easter Bunny came about.
Well, I was going to ask you that question, and you've answered it for me, so I don't think I'm going to ask it. He's answered it.
No, you haven't finished that.
No, he's answered it. So,
well, there was another question around that, which was:
is it morally correct to buy chocolate bilby rather than Easter bunnies when rabbits cause many problems for Australian farmers every year? Well,
they are a pest. They are a pest, aren't they? Rabbits are, but we also keep them as pets. So I don't know. I mean, the rabbits are there. I mean, they're a bit like blowflies and cane toads. They're there. And look, I'm rather partial to a roast rabbit,
But I'm not going to eat a cane toad, am I?
No, we used to live up the north coast, and we had a dog that used to eat cane toads, and it would make him very, very sick. But no. But look, the bilby versus the rabbit. I don't mind that. I mean, it's an Australian animal, isn't it? It's a native animal, so I don't mind that. If people want to have a bilby instead of a rabbit, I mean, it doesn't make any difference really. It's still just made out of chocolate, and you're still buying it in the shop.
But the thing is, the bilby, like when you buy a bilby, every time you buy a bilby, a portion of that sale goes towards effectively resurrecting bilbies from extinction. So I guess you could call it another form of resurrection, I suppose.
Look, that's another topic, but I've never been a great one for that business about a portion of this sale goes to this particular charity. I mean, you go to McDonald's and you buy a burger, and they say they donate, 10 cents from every burger to a children's charity or something. I mean, look, if you're serious about it and you want to support that charity, then don't go and buy the product. Go and take all the money you'd spend on the product and donate it straight to that charity.
You'd actually make more money. It's kind of insulting saying, hey, yes, we're going to give 10 cents to an orphanage.
Yeah.
Here's my next question, which again you've answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why is the bunny such an important symbol for us as Christians for Easter?
You've just answered it.
But you've answered, but...
As I said, I don't know where that story is true, but nowhere else. I don't know whether you ever find any evidence of anything else to do with rabbits in the Bible, except for the fact that the good book does say, go forth and multiply.
Yes.
Which rabbits are good at. So maybe we should be like rabbits at certain stages of our lives. In fact, I've had Christian ministers tell me from time to time, you should be going at it like rabbits. So yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people think Christian people are very straight-laced, but actually they're not.
Actually, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, because a lot of people are like, oh, you're Christian and therefore you don't believe in sex. That couldn't be further from the truth. The Catholic Church actually encourages sex, and a lot of it. So,
well, they must because Catholic families are quite large, so they must.
Yes. So.
Okay.
And actually, that's a topic for another day. But God invented sex actually, and the only problem is people use it in the wrong context completely, which is why a lot of the time it doesn't work and it doesn't satisfy. So, but that's a topic for another day, as I said. Let's not deal with that tonight.
Well, yeah,
let's not do that.
We'll make that into another video, I think.
Here's my next question. And it's quite a serious one. Have people forgotten the real meaning of Easter?
I think people have some people have and some people haven't. So anyone that's associated with the church probably hasn't.
Not entirely, no.
Yeah, but I think that anyone who's basically doesn't have a Christian affiliation, would just probably just celebrate it as a family day, like Christmas. And because they, apart from family being the number one meaning in their lives, I guess they just wouldn't really care, to be perfectly honest.
I think less people have forgotten the meaning of Easter than have forgotten the meaning of Christmas.
Christmas is so
and a lot of people, I mean, you mentioned the Catholic Church. In the Catholic Church, a lot of people still participate in Lent, which is giving something up or giving up a number of things for a number of weeks prior to Easter, which is actually on now, isn't it?
Yes.
And I mean, there are other associated festivals like the Mardi Gras, which of course was hijacked in the late 70s by the gay and lesbian Mardi Gras, and that's why they called it the Mardi Gras, and that's why they had it here, because it was close to the Christian festival of the Mardi Gras, so they could have a go at the Christians. But that's another story as well.
Oh dear.
But there are other festivals which people celebrate around Easter time, which I mean, I suppose there is the Advent coming up to Christmas, but that's less known and less practiced, I think.
My second to last question is, Horsey, what other symbols of Christ's resurrection have been used during Easter?
Well, I guess you could say Easter buns was one of them, where they put a cross in the middle of some.
The hot cross bun, one of my favorite foods.
Yes. Yeah. There's a few of them. The bunny is probably the biggest one. The egg, that's another one. You know what I used to remember is that you used to be able to get these eggs, right? And inside the chocolate eggs, you would actually get a G.I. Joe. But they couldn't call it a G.I. Joe. They had to call it a G.I. Jones for commercial reasons. But it was fantastic. You got an egg, and then you got a soldier in the egg. It was great. It had nothing to do with Easter. It just had everything to do with capitalism, but it was delicious and fun.
In my culture, just quickly, in my culture, my background, in our household, mum and dad will actually, or more so mum nowadays, will take the eggs, she'll boil them, all of them, and while she's boiling them, she'll either put Spanish onion, the peel from it, because it's like a red color, the Spanish onion, and then she'll put that in there, or she'll put drops of red food coloring and blue food coloring and mix it all up and put it in a wooden tray. And then we would come Easter morning, Easter Sunday, and I would take one egg and my dad would take the other egg, and we'd play with it. Like one would hit the top and one would hit the other, and whoever won, if their egg was stronger, didn't smash, they win it. But that's my tradition.
Well, I made chocolate crosses one year. I got some old cookie cutters and I got some pliers, and I bent them into the shape of a cross, and I put the chocolate in them and put them in the freezer and made chocolate crosses. The trouble is some of them were a bit thin and they broke, but it was an interesting curio that Easter.
What do you think?
Well, I used to remember that one of my friends actually used to make gingerbread crosses for Easter. But that could have been used for Christmas as well. But she actually did do them for Easter and put it was like a white icing on top of them to represent peace, and they were delicious. I also remember that during Easter when I was a kid, I actually had to wear white shoes during Easter to represent purity and also peace as well. And that was the thing that my family made me do. And I'd have my sailorish stuff on and whatever with my white shoes, and I'd go to church in that. So
there are a lot of other traditions and things around it, but I mean the main meaning of Easter for me is the resurrection, and that's where the saying actually comes from. That's the crux of the matter, and the cross or the center of the crucifix being the central point, and that's the central thing. And go to Catholic churches actually have Jesus hanging on the cross in up the front of the church, but if you go to Protestant churches, there's an empty cross. Jesus was on the cross and he actually came off the cross, and that's the main meaning for me. The send to people, even if they don't celebrate it or don't believe in that message.
True. Speaking on that, last question: the importance of prayer and reflection. Thoughts?
It's interesting, isn't it, how between Good Friday and Easter Day, which I think a lot of churches now call Sunday, I mean, it doesn't matter. That time when Jesus was in the tomb or dead is a time when a lot of people do reflect. And it was said years ago that the Easter Monday was an extra day tacked onto the Easter weekend, so you continue to reflect on what it meant. And then, of course, we had Easter Tuesday when the school holidays weren't there, and because that was the day the kids all went to the Easter show. But yeah, there is a lot of reflection around Easter time, and that's good. And it's a quiet festival, which is, because it's, Good Friday, particularly for people who attend church on Good Friday and Easter Day, it's a very quiet day. It's even maudlin, actually. And some people go so far as to participate in the fact that Jesus has died and hasn't risen again. And they're very, very sad until Easter Day when he's risen, and then they're happy again. And you've seen those guys who actually put themselves on crosses or drag them around, at Easter time to try and experience what Jesus experienced. So for a lot of people, it is a festival of reflection and mourning and then joy after. So it is very, very deep.
I actually have seen that. I've seen priests actually do that on television, where they've basically got a whip and just effectively whipped themselves to the point where they're actually bleeding, so they can feel what it must have been like when Jesus was crucified. And I've even heard of, I'm not sure if you've heard of the Stigmata, which is basically people been claiming that they could feel the actual nails going through their hands, just as Christ had experienced.
And their marks on their wrists and that sort of thing. Yes. Yeah.
So there's people like that, and that's in a whole different.
I think you can go too far with that, and I think flagellating yourself and all that sort of thing, or getting someone to whip you and hang you on a cross, is going a bit far. I don't think we're called to do that, but I guess if it helps some people to believe, then okay. But yeah, I think that's going a bit far.
Personally, I think that everyone's got their cross to bear. Sure. So you don't have to beat the crap out of yourself to basically experience what it's like to be Jesus. You just got to have your own cross to bear, as in your own pain and whatever, or even your own sins and guilt, and then confess to your God that and get that off your chest. And again, you've just effectively done everything that Jesus basically wants you to do. it's funny that for Jesus, when he came down here, his whole point wasn't to make other people suffer. It was basically to reverse people's suffering. And
the point of the Christian gospel is that Jesus has done what's necessary,
yeah,
for people to come to the Lord. And so you don't actually have to do it because Jesus has already done it. And if you try and do it, then you're maybe taken away from what Jesus has done. And what's the point of him doing it?
Exactly. So what's the point of you trying to destroy yourself in the worst way possible when Jesus has already done that for you? And he's given that gift to you so you don't have to go harm yourself ever again.
All you've got to do is trust in what he's done. That's right.
Exactly. So that's what I think people should just, you know, if you want to go whip yourself and whatever, and you're into that, then okay, fine. But like I think a lot of people have honestly missed the point of Easter or even Lent for that matter. And I think they just kind of need to read between the lines and just go, yeah, a cross doesn't have to be a big, two big 2x4s of wood that I have to carry in the street. It can be your own personal pain that you've been carrying and letting go of that pain as well.
The only thing I want to ask, and it's a debate, and I don't know how far we can go with this, but I've asked my father this millions of times, but I'm still not getting clarity on it. Now, some people, with our Lord being on the cross, he was seen in the Passion of the Christ being nailed here on the wrist. But there's some that are saying he was hit here. Now, which is the correct one?
I reckon. Well,
I don't know.
The question is, does it matter?
Not really.
But look, honestly, if it was done by the wrist, he would have died like that. And the Romans, they put Jesus on the cross not to kill him straight away. They put him on the cross so he could have a long, torturous death. If they wanted to just kill him straight away, they would have just slit his throat. But they didn't want to do that. They wanted to make him suffer. And that's recorded in the Bible. They wanted to make him suffer for long periods of time before he died.
Well, basically,
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
It's time to go. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Horsey. We look forward to having you with us next Wednesday.
Indeed. Happy Easter. And Easter's a few weeks ago, so we'll talk to you before then. But
Okay.
good night.
Good night. Bye.
Bye.